What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be going through my predictions for round 2 of the NBA playoffs, starting with the 2 games tonight. But before we start, make sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. The first game of the night is the 3rd seed New York Knicks taking on the 7th seed Philadelphia 76ers. And I do have the New York Knicks advancing to the conference finals, but I'm not confident in the slightest. The 76ers do have health issues, and that's what's going to be my final determining factor. Joel Embiid is never healthy, and he just hurt his knee again in Game 7 of the first round series. Paul George also has a long list of injuries, and their depth is already pretty thin. So if an injury or two is to occur, it could get scary for Philly. If Philadelphia wants to win this series, they're going to need to grind it out of New York. The Knicks are at their best when it's a high-scoring game. So if the Sixers' defense can keep a defensive intensity up, you could see them winning this series. Matchup-wise, Philly does line up well against New York, but I just can't go against Jalen Brunson in the playoffs. The Knicks don't have a Tyrese Maxey answer. Mikal Bridges has been cooked for a good part of the season when he guards Maxey. OG isn't a good matchup for Maxey either. OG favors better against bigger wings and guards rather than smaller shifty guards. Josh Hart doesn't have the speed and lateral quickness to keep up with Tyrese, though the Knicks are going to have to be heavily reliant on their bench of Jose Alvarado and Deuce McBride to stop him, or at least slow him down. VJ Edgecombe and Paul George will probably struggle in this series when OG Anunoby and Josh Hart are on them. But Embiid needs to have another dominant series like he did in the Boston series, especially up against Cat, who has a lot to be desired defensively, and Mitchell Robinson in the limited playing time he gets. I'm expecting a big series out of Kelly Oubre. He will more than likely be guarded by Brunson, and Philly should be looking to put Brunson in a lot of actions. So Oubre will be heavily active. The Sixers are going to need Quentin Grimes to come and play. They desperately need his scoring punch off the bench, especially with their limited bench production. But the Knicks will throw a lot of good defenders his way to slow him down. To go on the other end, Philadelphia have a good defense that can make Brunson's life hard, like VJ Edgecombe. Although he can struggle against change-of-pace guards and in the post, they've also got Paul George, who has taken turns guarding Brunson in the regular season. PG has the size to really disrupt Brunson, but he can tend to struggle against smaller and quicker guards for a long period of time. Another body they have that they can throw at Brunson is Kelly Oubre. His defense on Jaylen Brown was a huge reason why they beat Boston, but he does struggle against high IQ ball handlers, off-ball movers, and screen-heavy offenses, which is exactly what Brunson and the Knicks are. If they can get a few possessions where Maxey, Embiid, and Grimes can get a good contest on Brunson on switches, then I'll definitely take that. With Embiid's presence in the paint, Cat is going to have to rely on its three-point shooting to really get going in this series, because he does struggle against physical defense in the paint, and the Sixers' physicality at the center position will more than likely disrupt him. OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges should be wiped out of this series with the defense of Paul George and Kelly Oubre or VJ Edgecombe, so the Knicks will have to heavily rely on their bench and Josh Hart to keep them afloat. And I do think they have the arsenal to do so. Landry Shamet and Jordan Clarkson are the X-Factors, and if they can give the Knicks a solid 10 to 15 minutes a game, they win this series. Moving on to the second game of the night in the Western Conference, where we have the 2nd seed San Antonio Spurs taking on the 6th seed Minnesota Timberwolves. And this is another series that's heavily dependent on health. If healthy, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves advancing as an upset. Anthony Edwards and Ayo Dosunmu are both questionable for Game 1, and if they are out for an extended period of time, then I do have the Spurs advancing. But if it's just 1 or 2 games, I think the Wolves will be able to survive. The lack of experience may just cost the Spurs this season. Matchup-wise, this series is a mismatch for San Antonio. Outside of the center position, the Spurs' lack of size can become costly against a much bigger Timberwolves team. When he's playing, the Spurs don't have anyone you're comfortable with guarding Anthony Edwards. In 3 games against the Spurs this season, and is averaging 36 points per game. He's way too strong for guys like Stephon Castle, De'Aaron Fox, Devin Vassell, and Dylan Harper. So it's going to have to be one of Keldon Johnson, Julian Champagnie, or Harrison Barnes. And if I'm the Spurs, I'm not confident in any of them guarding Edwards in the slightest. He's way too explosive and fast for those guys, and that's a lot of size you are taking off Julius Randle. Even at 70%, Edwards is still one of the most dangerous scorers in the league, and the only real way to get, or at least stun him, is to send a double team at him all series long. Randle is in the same situation. He should thrive in the post-up against smaller defenders he'll be seeing all series long, but he will probably have a tough time finishing around the rim. McDaniels is another guy that should be able to take advantage of the smaller defenders and shoot over the top of them in the mid-range and out beyond the 3-point line, although he has had quite a bit of success at the rim this season against the elite rim protecting Wemby. The bench will play a big factor whether the Wolves head to their 3rd straight Western Conference Finals. Bones Highland needs to have a big series, especially if Dosunmu isn't healthy. Same as Terrence Shannon Jr., and they both have the offensive game to be real difference makers. But it's the defensive end of the ball that has a lot of question marks for them. Going on to the other end, Minnesota are a defensive-minded team and had the defense to shut the Spurs down. Although Rudy isn't the perfect defender against Wemby like he was with Jokic, he will more than likely struggle against Wemby's playstyle. Even though he's a center, Wemby is a perimeter-oriented guy, and Rudy's biggest defensive weakness is his mobility on the perimeter. Wemby did struggle the one game they faced off, however, when he shot 44% from the field. If the Spurs put Rudy in pick-and-roll situations and have Wemby pop out to the 3-point line, that's how San Antonio can take advantage the most. But the Wolves do have the defenders on the perimeter to stop the Spurs. Jaden McDaniels is one of the best defenders on the perimeter, and he had Jamal Murray in jail in the 1st round. There's no reason he can't do the same to De'Aaron Fox. Fox can't really use his speed against the fast, long, and athletic McDaniels. If he uses his speed to drive to the rim, you run straight into a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. But if Wemby hangs around the rim and he can draw Rudy away from Wemby, that does leave him wide open on a dump-off. But I do trust Chris Finch to come up with adjustments. In this series, Fox will have to heavily rely on his shot-making. While he is a good shooter in the mid-range, you can't trust his shooting from beyond the 3-point line. Stephon Castle is in a similar position. He's at his best when he's driving and finishing around the rim, but he can't with Rudy hanging around, and I don't trust his 3-point shooting for a prolonged series, especially when Anthony Edwards, who's a good defender, will be hanging onto him. They're going to be reliant on Devin Vassell scoring, and you'd think Minnesota would run out of defenders, but they've still got Ayo Dosunmu to stick on Vassell. So it may become an old-fashioned dogfight filled with elite defense and adjustments. I'm not expecting much from their rookie, Dylan Harper, going up against a title contender Timberwolves defense. His lack of experience will probably keep him out of the series and off the court for the most part, but hopefully he proves me wrong. Again, if healthy, I have Minnesota advancing to the Western Conference Finals. That's going to end this video. Make sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know who you think wins both games tonight and the series.